This video took me a while to put together, but I think the effort was worth it. Listen to this interview Alex Jones had with Peter Schweizer about all the corruption that takes place in Washington. I took the top 3 stories that I thought were most interesting and I put them on my YouTube channel for you. I hope you enjoy it.
Only if you are a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, can you actually give to a political campaign. The Supreme Court heard the case from these 2 Canadians. They came back 9-0 and said, no, this law makes complete sense. We don't want foreign influence flowing into our elections. When was the last time the Supreme Court agreed 9-0 on anything?
Never.
Well, so the Clintons have figured out a way. They set up this foundation, the Clinton Foundation, and Bill Clinton hits the lecture circuit. And this is a way to circumvent that. So they can't get African dictators, they can't get corrupt people that are international fugitives to give money to their campaigns. But they can get those people to give to their foundation, and they can get those people to give Bill Clinton inflated speaking fees as a conduit for bribery, as opposed to giving to their political campaigns. And that's what they've done. And the level of corruption, it involves the Russians, it involves organized crime, it involves African warlords. The people that the Clintons have taken money from is staggering and frightening. And what I chart in the book is the connection between the flow of money and an action that Hillary Clinton takes as Secretary of State. And when you see this pattern repeated over and over again, the only conclusion you can come to is these events are connected, and these are, in effect, bribes.
And, of course, the Associated Press and others are now reporting FBI Clinton probe expands to public corruption track. With all the corruption, the cattle futures, the scams, the dead bodies, the mafia, the cocaine kingpins getting pardons. I mean, there's no doubt, in my view, that the Clintons are organized crime. And is that why they're still in power? Because they're just too big to fail, that you just can't arrest the president, the former president and the former first lady, because it would just be too painful, kind of like they let Nixon scamper off into the darkness. The difference is Nixon didn't do anything near this, and he went off into the darkness. The Clintons are still there running things.
Well, Alex, look at the recent public corruption cases that we've had. Governor McDonnell in Virginia, or Senator Menendez in New Jersey, or you have the governor of Oregon, Kitzhaber, who resigned. In all of those cases, you had a few examples where they took money that they legally could take, but they took favorable actions for the benefit of the donor. You've got the governor of Virginia, former governor, who's in jail because of that. You've got Menendez facing charges, and I think these individuals should have been charged. But my point is that what they did, the scale of what they did, is small, very small in comparison to the widespread pattern of conduct that the Clintons have done. The dollar amounts are bigger. The people that they're taking the money from are far more nefarious. The favorable actions that Hillary took as Secretary of State are far worse. One of the cases that I highlighted in the book, and that the New York Times, of all people, has confirmed in a 4,000-word front-page piece, is the Clintons got $145 million from the shareholders in a small uranium company that wanted to sell their assets to the Russian government. Hillary Clinton's State Department was required to sign off on that deal, and they did. So literally, Hillary Clinton's State Department gave about 20% of U.S. uranium assets in the United States to the Russian government.
Unbelievable.
And the Clinton Foundation got $145 million from the shareholders.
I remember seeing that at Breitbart, and then Congress talked about it some, and it wasn't even a big deal, though. None of the other media picked it up. Think about that, folks. A foreign power getting our strategic uranium supply. If that isn't treason, if that isn't sedition, if that isn't espionage, if that isn't just industrial level espionage, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable, and sort of the list goes on. I mean, you've got international fugitives. You've got a guy who is business partners with Mark Rich. You remember Mark Rich? He was the international fugitive that Bill Clinton pardoned on his last day in office. Mark Rich, of course, his ex-wife gave $1 million to the Clinton Foundation and the Democratic Party. Bill Clinton pardons him. Well, that business partner of Mark Rich, a guy named Mark Shigori, is a very corrupt individual who lives in Nigeria. Now, he was convicted in 2000 of money laundering and aiding, abetting a criminal enterprise in Europe because he was helping the dictator of Nigeria literally smuggle billions of dollars out of the country and put them in Swiss bank accounts for his benefit. This is a guy that the Clintons have embraced. He's pledged $1 billion, that's with a B, to the Clinton Global Initiative. He's helped arrange speeches for Bill Clinton. He's given to the Clinton Foundation. In fact, when one of his sons got married, Bill Clinton showed up at the wedding. These are the kinds of people that are throwing cash at the Clintons and are getting favorable access and got favorable access while she was Secretary of State. They're not getting their money, Alex, from an insurance company in Great Britain. They're getting it from people who do mining deals with warlords in the Congo. They're doing it with people like Gilbert Chagoury. They're doing it with individuals involved in this Russian uranium deal. These are bad, corrupt individuals, and that's, I think, what people don't realize about the Clintons. And there are good people. I get frustrated when people say there's nobody good up there, nobody's fighting it, they're all corrupt. That's simply not true, and to me that's a cop-out, and you're exactly right. There's an opportunity here we have to try to take our government back. And here's what people need to know. There's an organization, international organization called Transparency International that looks at corruption and perceived corruption. They survey businessmen around the world and say, how corrupt are certain countries? When Barack Obama became president in 2009, the United States was in the middle of advanced industrialized countries in perceived corruption. By 2012, the end of his first term, we are now at the bottom. We are seen as the most corrupt of advanced industrialized countries in the world. So that was as of 2012, and I'm sure it's gotten worse. And the problem is, as government gets bigger, as they take more of our money, but as they expand their power and their reach, whether it's our health care or something else, it gives them more opportunities to put the screws to us and to extract benefits and to extort money. So
Governor Abbott's move to have a con to try to block what's going on. I mean, I've never been a supporter of a con because they could change the Constitution, Bill of Rights, but they're already doing it by executive power. Congress isn't blocking it. The courts are certifying it. So it's a desperate move, but for the first time in my life, I mean, the house is already burning down. What do you think?
Well, it's a great question. I'm certainly not a constitutional historian, but what I would say is, look, the Founding Fathers recognized that the states have a unique role, and the federal government has clearly gone well beyond the scope of what it was designed. And if it takes a convention of the states or a constitutional convention to deal with that, that may be the only mechanism left. I do think there are people in Washington. We can elect better people in Washington. We can move the ball down the field. But ultimately something needs to be done as far as the encroachment, because otherwise we are simply going to see more self-enrichment and more wealth creation. Think about this for a second, Alex. Of the 10 wealthiest counties in the entire United States, the 10 wealthiest counties, seven of them are counties that border Washington, D.C.
And D.C. is the richest place in the world.
That's right. They just passed Silicon Valley a couple years ago for per capita income. Per capita income is now higher in Washington, D.C. than it is in Silicon Valley in California.
If folks want to know the disconnect, I'm only in D.C. maybe once a year covering things. And even when you're not in the super nice areas or the nice areas, there's armored limos, diplomats, foreign Secret Service getting in your face, treating tourists and families like crud. And then almost every restaurant I go in, there are the most beautiful women I've ever seen, the cream of America, literally getting in the limos with the politicians, in the limos with the lobbyists. You know, the hookers are more ubiquitous than water fountains. And the point is, it's like Rome. It's so decadent. And now at University of Texas in Austin, they've had UN advisors there, and UN comes and investigates the governor and the border in New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. And Breitbart broke months ago. I couldn't believe when I read it, and I went to the UN documents. There it was. A strong cities initiative opening UN offices to watch our local governments and work with the feds. I mean, you can really see the arrogant takeover, and now the UN wants to extend diplomatic immunity to hedge funds. You can see the new royalty is what I'm saying. An above-the-law group whose main business is selling off American supremacy, selling off American industry, making deals with other countries in interest to shut down sectors to transfer it to them. They've sold the country out, and they are just in their own world, knee-deep in hookers. I mean, I'm sorry, sir, but that's what I see.
Well, you know, Alex, here's a story that I think really captures it. A couple of years ago, I did a special for Fox News called Boomtown. And it was on Washington, D.C. And in that special, we actually interviewed a guy who is a salesman for Ferrari of Washington, D.C. There's a Ferrari dealer in Washington, D.C. And he told us on camera, Alex, that the people at headquarters of Ferrari were kind of frustrated with Ferrari of Washington, D.C. And we said, well, why is that? Is it because you're not selling enough cars? And he said, no, it's because Ferrari in Beverly Hills, California, and Ferrari in South Beach, Florida, when people come in to buy Ferraris, they're financing their purchases, and the headquarters wants that. In Ferrari of Washington, D.C., too many people are paying cash. So we have a situation where Ferrari actually sells more cars in Washington, D.C. than they do in Beverly Hills or South Beach. And people are paying cash. They're not even bothering to finance their deals. That tells you how out of control the self-enrichment and the corruption.
And they're doing it at the expense of the country's